Hi everyone, welcome to the second Analogue with Albie. I wondered if you might like to have a little look around the darkroom. The first thing you see when you come in is my table that I do the matting and things on. At the moment it's just got some of my cameras on it, which I thought you might be interested in having a look at. I'm going to be doing a series of gear videos covering my camera equipment, all of which is quite old, with one or two exceptions I suppose. But I've got all sorts of there. I'm quite manufacturer agnostic, so digital wise I've got a couple of Canon cameras and my Fuji camera. I've got an instant Polaroid camera. I've got an instant Instax lomography back, medium format. I suppose I've got a Pentax 645, I've got a Mamiya RB67, and I've got my trusty Holga, which I love dearly. 35mm, the only one I've got here is the Olympus XA, but I've got an OM1, an OM10, a Pentax ME Super, which was my first ever camera. I still have it and I still love it. I think it's a fabulous camera. I've got some pinholes here as well, so that's a Reality So Subtle pinhole, which has been absolutely beautifully made. I'm delighted to have that, but my other pinhole cameras are not quite as beautifully made, but work fantastically. So I've got a Kenko tin, I've got an old iPhone box, and I've got a chocolate box. It doesn't have to be Belgian, and it doesn't have to be from Marks and Spencer's. Non-Tory chocolate boxes work just as well as those ones do. Large format, I've got 4x5 here, which is an Intrepid 4x5, which I have to say I love. It does everything that I need it to do, and I clip my lomography back onto that one, and that again works a treat. Over in this section I have a fan because it gets quite warm in here. Got my little homemade dark box, which thankfully I don't need to use that often because I've got a dark room, so I can just switch all the lights off. Luckily I've got a fridge here as well, which is well stocked with medium format film, 35mm film, 4x5 film, 8x10 film, X-ray film, paper for printing on of all sorts of different varieties. I tend to go for Ilford, to be honest with you, although I do have some FOMA. When it comes up in a deal I tend to grab some FOMA. But again, as you can see, I've got Polaroid and I've got Instax in there. I don't really mind. I'm not that fixated on who the manufacturer is. That's a little bit of an Instax. That's a homage picture to one of my favourite photographers. This is where I hang up my negatives and my prints whenever I'm done with them. Got the Intrepid Compact Enlarger, which I haven't had to use, but I am looking forward to. I'm going to take that home with me, and I'm going to have that as my home enlarger, just in case the need takes me and I'm stuck in the house. For instance, if I were to horribly get COVID or have to self-isolate in some way. Over here I've got my 35mm black and white enlarger, a little Durst M305, a great reliable enlarger. Only use it for 35mm, only use it for black and white, it's perfect for that. Very important, the coffee machine. Vitally important, the coffee machine. Here is where I tend to do my alt prints. So I use this for cyanotype, palladium, platinum, but this is a homemade exposure unit. It's a 50-watt UV, which I have attached to a highly complex 6-inch high cardboard box. It works brilliantly for anything up to A4. Anything bigger than that you would need something else, but A4 that works great. I have a Jobo, the CPE2 with the lift, and a load of Jobo tanks which came with it. I use like 2 tanks, but the Jobo is very, very handy. Once you get it dialed in, it's great. I'll do a future video on dialing in a Jobo. I've got my washer for washing fibre-based prints, and I've got my drying rack there. This is my darkroom light. It's a bit brighter than that when all the lights are off. Up here I've got some photography that I've done. This is where I store some of my equipment. My sink. I was doing a little bit of testing of very old wet plate chemicals today, so that's why I've got a wet plate sitting there. But here's an example of a wet plate that I've done. That's my daughter. That's my wife. That is me. That's not really, that's what I feel like a lot of the time. Up there is that beast, is a metal halide bulb that I used before I made my little cyanotype development unit, and it works fantastically. It's brilliant for doing alt photography prints, but it is horrendously warm when you get it cranked up, and it's really bad for the environment because of the amount of electricity it uses. It did for me at the time, but now I'm much happier with the cyanotype unit. Here is something I'm really pleased that I've got, and I was delighted when I got it. It's my 4x5 enlarger, which I love very much, my LPL 4x5 enlarger. I use that just for 4x5s and medium format. All the 35mm done on the little Durst, but I feel very fortunate to have that. I was able to get it locally and pick it up locally, which was amazing, and for a really good price, which was even more amazing. This is where I sit when I do sit. An extremely old MacBook, which is well in excess of 10 years old, but does the trick for what I need, and in fact is okay for running Photoshop on, as long as you don't ask it to do multiple tasks at a time. And occasionally I do Giclée prints, not on this printer. I have another printer that I do my Giclée on, which is the bigger printer. But this printer here has been fantastic for me. It's the Pro 100S, and it's an A3 Plus printer. And I do a bit of mixed digital and analog occasionally. And I do use my V850 Pro scanner when I'm doing that to scan in negatives. And to do a bit of work around digital negatives for when I'm doing cyanotype or salt print work. So I'm very fortunate to have that also. Here's Yoda, and a Merry Christmas everyone. And there is my 8x10 Intrepid camera, which is fantastic. I only use that in the studio. I've got a number of different backs for it that I do my wet plate in. So I do 4x5, 5x7 and 8x10 wet plate. And through there is my studio, which is a little bit of a mess at the moment, so I'm not going to take you through there, but I will take you through there at a later date. And that, everyone, is my darkroom. I love it very much. If there's anything that you've seen that you'd like a bit more information on, just ask in the comments and I'll do a video for it later. Thank you.